After years of hard work, dedication, passion, I found myself facing a devastating betrayal that would change my life forever. It all began when I was forced out of the bakery business that I had founded, a venture that had been my life's work for 15 years. The bakery was more than just a business to me. It was my baby, built on my grandmother's cherished recipes, supported by my parents' small loan, and nurtured through countless early mornings and sleepless nights. Over the years, I had transformed a single storefront into 5 thriving locations, earning a solid reputation in our local community. My personal life was intertwined with my professional one. I was married for 22 years, raising 2 children, a daughter who was now 21 and a son who was 19. They grew up surrounded by the warmth and hustle of the bakery, and I always envisioned them taking over the family business one day. But as we enter a phase of growth and success, things began to change. About 3 years ago, following our rise to local fame, my father-in-law, a retired businessman, became increasingly involved. Initially, I welcomed his advice as I was more of a creative force, focusing on recipes and baking, while the business side was less familiar to me. However, my wife began to advocate for a more structured management style, positioning her father as consultant and herself as the CEO, while I was relegated to the role of master baker. It felt like a demotion in my own company, but I reluctantly went along, hoping that we could balance each other's strengths. As time passed, I noticed my family holding secret meetings, and when I finally confronted them, the bombshell dropped. They proposed a significant restructuring to accommodate outside investors, friends of my father-in-law, who would push for rapid expansion and even franchising. My instincts as a founder told me this could jeopardize everything I had built. Nonetheless, my wife and kids were enthralled by visions of growth and profit, which were clearly influenced by my father-in-law's insights. One fateful evening, I came home to find them gathered at the dining table with paperwork. My daughter started with, "Dad, we need to talk," and my wife slid over a new operating agreement. This document transferred control away from me, positioning my wife as CEO, my father-in-law as chairman, and my children as vice presidents. I was devastated. My son even said, "It's not personal, Dad, just business," which cut deeply. I refused to sign the agreement, but instead of a reasonable discussion, I was met with hostility. My wife accused me of being selfish, stating they didn't need Deadweight, like me holding them back. When my father-in-law offered a pitiful buyout for my stake, I rejected it and sought legal counsel. My lawyer was horrified upon reviewing the documents and revealed that my wife had been transferring company assets into her and her father's names, subtly undermining my control. Determined to fight back, we drafted a counterproposal that would ensure I receive fair market value for my majority stake, while retaining the rights to my original recipes. Their reaction was explosive, guilt-tripping my children, threats from my father-in-law, and emotional outbursts from my wife. But I stood firm, and after intense negotiations, they accepted a revised offer that allowed me to sell my majority stake for a fair price. I agreed to stay on temporarily to train a new head baker, but the moment I signed the agreement, my wife filed for divorce. While the end of my marriage was painful, I felt a sense of relief. I moved into a small apartment, took some time for myself, traveled, and began plotting my next steps. My non-compete agreement meant I couldn't start another bakery in the same city for a year, but I could help someone else. So I partnered with my sister, who had always supported me but had never been involved in the business. We found a location far from my old bakery, and I dedicated myself to building it from the ground up. We focused on high-quality ingredients and traditional recipes, which quickly attracted customers. Meanwhile, my former bakery struggled. Under my father-in-law and the new investors, they expanded rapidly, compromising the quality of their products by using cheaper ingredients and centralizing production. It wasn't long before negative reviews started pouring in, and the brand I had built began to tarnish. When my old bakery missed a payment on my buyout, I contemplated my options. My lawyer suggested we demand immediate payment with penalties, but I decided to reach out to a friend still working there to understand the situation. She informed me that the expansions were causing financial strain, and employees were leaving in droves. This information solidified my decision to pursue my legal rights aggressively. As expected, My phone blew up with frantic voicemails from my ex-wife, my daughter, and my father-in-law, pleading for more time and claiming I was being unreasonable. I ignored them, forwarding their messages to my lawyer. My son reached out for a coffee meeting, where he confessed his regrets about how things unfolded. He had tried to warn them about the direction the bakery was heading, but was dismissed. I encouraged him to find a job elsewhere and earn his stripes in the culinary world before considering working with me. Eventually, when the bakery officially defaulted on their payments, I triggered a clause in our agreement, allowing me to convert the missed payment into equity. This maneuver gave me a significant stake in my old business, which sent my father-in-law and ex-wife into a panic. They could not comprehend how I had managed to regain control after they had tried to push me out. An emergency board meeting was called, where my father-in-law proposed more drastic measures that would further damage the brand. I suggested closing the underperforming locations, reinstating quality ingredients, and rehiring key staff. Though my father-in-law dismissed my ideas, I managed to gain the support of one investor who was tired of losing money. We voted, and with that vote, my plan was implemented. Slowly, the business began to stabilize, but the damage to my family relationships was profound. My divorce was finalized. My daughter had distanced herself from me, and my son was still trying to establish himself in his career. A year after I left the bakery, my non-compete agreement expired, and I officially became a partner in my sister's successful bakery. We opened another location, continuing to prioritize quality over rapid expansion. As my old bakery struggled to regain its footing, my father-in-law eventually bought out some investors who wanted out, which shrank the business back to its original 5 locations. But it was clear the spark was gone. Occasionally, I would run into my ex-wife and daughter at industry events. Our interactions were polite yet strained. Then out of the blue, I received an email from my daughter asking if we could talk. I was apprehensive about whether it would be an apology or some other agenda. Around the same time, my father-in-law suffered a mild stroke, which altered his perspective. After his recovery, we met for coffee. He admitted he had been wrong about everything and seemed to have gained a new appreciation for what I had built. While we wouldn't become the best of friends, we were no longer at each other's throats. One of the most rewarding moments came during a local food festival, where both my old bakery and my sister's bakery had a joint booth. Customers who had supported me for years noticed a revival of the brand, and I felt a sense of pride standing next to my son, offering fresh pastries. He turned to me and said, "We did it, Dad." To which I replied, "You did it. I just showed you how." It felt like a symbolic passing of the torch. In the end, the saga of how my own family attempted to force me out of the business I created turned into a story of resilience, recovery, and the importance of loyalty. I learned that greed can blind those closest to you, but sometimes the best form of revenge is to rise above the challenges and build something even better. The experience taught me invaluable lessons about family, business, and the power of perseverance.